Welcome back to the BookEnds YouTube channel. I'm James McGowan.
I'm Jessica Faust.
We are literary agents who have taken our popular blog to YouTube to discuss all things publishing. Today we're talking about, we did bad math, the 6 ways to know, we wrote 5, but the 6 ways to know that your book is starting in the wrong place.
You know, I'm totally going to go off the rails here and talk about opening scenes that just don't work too, right?
Okay.
Just be prepared for that. Just be prepared.
Well, so just some context for those that are new to querying, sending your book to agents. Usually they'll ask for sample pages, which is like the first 5, sometimes 10 pages. And that's usually what we're judging the writing and the start of the book off of, right? Like when we're reading
If we read them.
Yeah, when we're reading queries, if we're unsure, we'll sometimes read those sample pages, and that's the beginning. But when we do request something, obviously it's where we start reading, right? We're not jumping to chapter 5. So the first chapter of the book is where you want to make, obviously, a great impression to keep us hooked in through the rest of the book.
To keep any reader hooked in, right?
Exactly.
When you read those first pages, the best books have that like, oh, yeah. I can't put this down for even a second.
Yeah,
opening.
you know which one I talk about all the time? The Push by Ashley Audrain. Like the starting with watching the daughter in the through the living room window. Like that's something that you just can't forget it.
I just got chills. I forgot about that. I just got chills when you said that. That was so crazy.
But that's the moment you want. Like you want your reader, agent, editor, whoever to open your Word document and be like, what is happening? I have to keep reading.
You know what another amazing one was? There's the Dry and Dry. And it's the one set in Australia.
Dry by Jim Harper.
Yes. That opening, which is a prologue. And this is an example of when a prologue works versus it's filled with backstory and is boring and makes no sense prologue. That prologue also had that holy cow opening to it.
It was really good. I just read one, The Violence by Delilah Dawson, and it starts off with a shock. Like you want to start your book off at a point where readers will get a sense of what's to come. But in your writing, in the plot, in the action, in the high, it's a high moment, right? So like all of those things, it's a tall order for a couple of pages of text.
One of the things that writers so often hear is start with the action. And I want to change that because what we often get, which kind of goes into the wrong place thing here, are authors who, maybe this could be number 1. Sorry, I just totally took over.
They're not numbered, they're just bullet points. So
they start with the action, but it's like this shootout. And you have no idea what's happening because you have no context. You don't even know where they are. You don't know the characters. And it's not really start with the action. It's start in an active way.
Yeah.
So that's what I would like to do. But your book starts in the wrong place when it's so much action that we're not actually getting context to both characters and plot.
Yeah, so what writers are probably trying to do in a moment like that, right, is to invest the reader into this high stakes immediately, but we can't be invested into high stakes without having an investment into a character or like some sense of protagonist, antagonist, good and evil in those openings, right? And that can come really in anything, right? So if it's, Olivia Black's Killer Content, the book starts off with the character Odessa Dean in New York, and you already connect to Odessa, and then you're like, New York is the big, great evil, right? Like the big, crazy thing. So you have to be able to hook your reader into and direct them where you want. Like you want to direct their sympathies. And you can't do that if there's just like bullets flying or like a big parkour scene or something like that. Like we're not going to know what we're following. So context.
Yep. The second way.
The second way to know that your book is starting off in the wrong place, I'm going to save that one for last. But so we don't get a sense of your main character.
Yeah. Like it feels, your main character can be somewhat vague. And I think of the book You and the way that story is told, but you get an absolute sense for this character, even if you really don't know what's happening.
You get the context. Like, immediately, like
Creeper.
You're told what to feel, right? Like,
yes.
And that's what a good opening does, is it directs you where you want your readers, what you want them to feel. I keep saying that, but that's what the opening does.
Yeah, and also knowing who the main character is. Sometimes books will start out and there'll be a multitude of characters but they all feel equal. And because I haven't gotten to know who they are, I have no idea who I'm supposed to be rooting for here.
And books with a prologue that will then do like a huge character jump, and you're like, wait, how
Oh,
does
I
this,
hate that.
right? Like, how does the character in chapter one, how do you relate to this character in the prologue, right? All the prologues that start with like a dying character or a serial killer, like, who are you? Are you the cop?
The
Are you
serial
this?
killer killing somebody in the
Right,
prologue, just don't do it.
right. Are you the victim's sister? Or like, who are you? And
Yeah.
we need that context immediately.
Yep. Absolutely.
Another thing is if those opening pages are not some sort of introduction or some sort of build to what your main conflict is going to be. So if the book starts off in a place and then has to pivot to get us to the main story, it's probably starting in the wrong place.
Yeah. 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 It should be that scene leads us to the next scene, not that scene leads us way down here.
Yeah, a book is all about the domino fall, right? So everything has to propel the story forward. And if we're taking a huge left turn or we're in a whole different galaxy of what this book is, then we're not starting in the right place.
Yep.
This is an important one, and I think it's also really important for prologues too. But the tone, the writing style, the tense, the character, all of that's like too much changes from the opening of the book to the rest of the book.
Yeah, and I often find this happens when an author is still figuring out what the opening is, and they think they've written their opening, but is that second chapter really the opening? It's usually not, but they're still trying to sort of figure out who their characters are, what the book is, and that first chapter is that, but it's not meant to be the first chapter.
Yeah.
It's their own sort of free writing to understand this.
Right, but I mean, that's a great way to start, right? Like, just start the story. If you're having trouble knowing where to begin the story, just begin anywhere, and you can
Yeah.
always come back and you can make all the pieces fit into place.
Yeah, but that happens a lot where maybe the opening was really hilarious, and maybe that's what the author wanted to write. But as the book goes on, it's actually not a hilarious book. So then you got to figure out that first chapter.
Hilarious. Got it. No, but yeah, exactly. Like that super dark opening, and then we get to like this really light and fluffy. That tonal shift is confusing.
Yeah, and not what the reader wants.
Yeah.
I mean, the reader who likes dark likes dark.
Yep.
No.
There's a way to balance it, and I think finding that nice balance throughout the opening to transition us to the rest of the book. Like we don't want dark all book long, right?
No.
But
No.
and again, I just read The Violence, so it's top of mind, but it's a super dark book, but it shifts into like light, sarcastic tone throughout much of the rest of the book. So being able to find that and strike that balance. Okay, this is the one that's probably most common, but just a ton of backstory. The dreaded info dump.
This is why I do not like prologues as sample chapters in submissions, because and somebody's going to say, but I love a prologue. I love a great prologue too.
I was gonna say I love a prologue.
But so many of them in submissions are not doing you or your book justice. And because of this, it's the serial killer torturing the victim. Have seen that so often in my career that, or or just backstory that really doesn't it doesn't move the story forward for me.
World building. I find it so common in anything with, some level of world building that needs to be done. Just giving us all of the information up front instead of carefully doling it out when it needs to be doled out or to help your reader understand it. But I mean, there was a YA fantasy book I read so long ago that the first like 20 pages were just world building.
Right. Right.
That loses me. That loses me immediately. So
or the character introductions where
yes.
it's like, Janice was sitting at the tea shop and in walked her best friend Sophia, and then a full paragraph describing what Sophia looks like, which is what Janice would never do.
Your characters, true. Your characters should be introduced as they're as they're moving the plot forward. So something needs to be happening to the characters, and the introduction can be weaved through that event.
Yeah, I always say when we meet people in real life,
Right.
getting to know them and see who they are is a very slow evolution. It's not just what they look like, it's their mannerisms, how they speak, it's the stories they tell. It happens over a period of time, and it should do the same in your book.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so this is the one that I wanted to end off on because I think it's like a surefire way to know that you're not. You've thought about sending agents another chapter from your sample chapters.
Oh,
We get this question kind of a lot. Like, do I have to send the first chapter of my book? My question is, why wouldn't you? Like, that's the place where your reader is 100% at the starting line, right? Like, we are 100% with you because we're all being introduced to it. So now, if you throw me into chapter 4, 3 chapters of stuff have happened, context that I'm gonna miss.
and if I'm
Presumably.
not gonna miss it, then that's
Exactly. If I'm not missing it, then those first 3 chapters don't make sense. Like, why are they
right.
there?
Right. I
So
used to, back in the snail mail days, people would just pull out pages of their manuscript. So they would pull out like page 150 because it was a really great scene. Why do I have to wait till 150 to get there?
no, see, you don't want that. You don't want that. But also, like, if you're showing me what you think is a really great scene, where's that energy for the rest of the book?
From the beginning.
So you have on your own determined that the rest of the book doesn't hold up to the standard that you've set.
Hmm.
So maybe you're not done revising.
Yep. Yep.
So those are our 6 probably the most basic ways to know that your book's not starting off in the right place. But we hope it was helpful for those who are still writing and revising before you start querying. If you are querying and you're unsure, there's a little checklist for you to read through your opening.
And if
But
you're unsure, then maybe it isn't working.
it's true.
You
Get
would
some
know.
critique partners. You would know. You would.
Yeah.
So we hope it was helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We post new videos every Wednesday, and we hope to see you back here next week.